All right, so in the last video, we got proof of concept. So we know we can actually read data from this from external sources. We got this do post to work. So we can now get to actually creating something more usable out of this. So the first thing I want to do, I want to just very quickly port this to a local Clasp project. So I always like to do those after I deploy the app first. So I did do that already. So we got all of this set up. So now I can just create a folder on my computer and open that in Visual Studio Code. Fire up the terminal, initiate a node project, npm init. I'm going to do -y to not have to answer a bunch of questions. And I'll make a folder here for all the stuff I'm going to have to get from this. So I'm going to go ahead and get the project ID, which is called script ID now. Same thing. Copy this. And while I'm at it, I'll fix the time zone. So now I'll go back. So I already have Clasp installed. If you don't know how to use Clasp, I have a video covering that. So I'm not going to go over a lot here. So I'll just go ahead and do Clasp and log in to begin with. So there it is. We're logged in. Now let's just go ahead and clone that script. I think I've accidentally deleted one of the characters here. Let me just delete this and paste this again. And I also want to make sure I point to this src directory. So for that, I'm going to do -- root dir and then point to that src directory, just like this. Hit enter. That should get all the files. There it is. That's our code.js, which has all of this. So that's pretty good. I will also make sure I install TypeScript definitions so I have autocomplete. So for that, let's just go very quickly to Clasp documentation. Okay, so here we are. So we need their docs. And in docs, I'm going to go to TypeScript. And in here, I'm just going to scroll down. There it is. Copy that. Just go ahead and run this. And we should be all set. Assuming all of this works, I should be able to do something like spreadsheet app and autocomplete is in here. Good. So let's see what I want to do here. The first thing I want to do, I want to be able to make this toGet function to return me things more than this, right? Right now, this is the response we have. So I would like to be able to read this spreadsheet data and basically just return it back as a JSON array. So let's do that. We have 4 columns. I'm going to use this column names on top as identifier for columns. So let's just go and read that to an array. So I'll just do get active spreadsheet, at least for now. So below this, I'll get the worksheet. It's called customers. In here, we're going to have to get the range of data. So that was starting from the first cell. So I'll just grab the A1. And then to this, I'm going to do get data region to just select the whole thing. And then get values to get the values out of it. Okay, so that should basically read that entire thing to an array. So at this point, I want to grab the headers out of it. And I can do that by basically just dropping that first headers. So let me show you. So if I take that data, which should be an array, the first line in that array is going to be the headers. So if I do shift, that removes the first element from an array. So that's going to drop the first row in our data. But it also returns that row back. So when I do this, it's going to remove the first row from this data array. But at the same time, it's going to save that first row in this headers variable. So at this point, this headers will be an array of our headers row, which is the first one on top. So now that I have those headers, I will just basically create a JSON array. So the way spreadsheet arrays work, we basically have array of arrays. So it's basically something like this. But what we're looking for more an array of objects. And in this, basically, we'll have all these objects as an array, comma separated. And each object is going to have those different column names we have in here. So we'll have ID, first, last, telephone. So here it would be like ID is 3, John, and something like that. So this is the way we need our data. So that means what I'm going to do, I'm just going to loop through the data. And I should be able to just map through it to create this new thing that I need. And as I map through this, I'll take each row and do an arrow function. And we'll save the results in a new variable. So we need each row to return an object. And in that object, it's basically going to be the ID is the first column is going to be whatever the ID is. So if I was doing an example of this, I would say ID colon, and then it would be R0 to get the first column. That's where IDs are from this row. And then I would do a comma here, and to this same object, I would do, let's say, the first name or whatever it's called. And then the first name would be, well, instead of this, we'll do R1, which is the next column over, and so on. So basically, if you look at this, it's our header, and then the data. Header, and then the data. Header, the data. The headers are basically matching the same columns. So by indexes, the header is 0, the first header. And the column where we need to get the information from is also 0. Then 1, then 2, then 3. So I'm going to use that in my advantage. So I'm going to go back. And here, instead of returning this right away, let's just very quickly create an object here. And it will be an empty object for the time being. And to this object, I'm going to basically assign a bunch of properties. And the properties I need to assign are basically those column names like ID, first name, which are saved in this headers variable. So I need to iterate through those different columns. So I need to say first column, second column, third column, fourth column, right? But I have to go 0, 1, 2, 3. So to do that, I'm going to use the second argument in here. So instead of just passing the row, which is basically the actual data from that row, I'm going to use this second argument here, which is the I, which is the index. And I'm going to say, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I need to take that headers array that I have on top, and for each one of them, and we'll do an arrow function here. So let's just do H for a header. So for each one of those headers, so the headers are going to go, the first one is going to be ID, then first name, then last name. I need to assign all of those to this object. So what I need to do, I need to take that object, and to that object, we're going to assign the current header, which is going to be that age. And to that age, we're going to basically assign the value from that row in that same column. So it needs to be like R0, then R1, then R2, then R3. So it seems like I don't really need this I, because I'm going to be using this I over here. So here I'm going to pass the second I argument, because this is where I can use that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, just looping through these headers. And if I just do I, basically the first header is going to be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and that will match our columns. So this should just assign to this object all the properties we need. So all we need to do at that point, we need to just return this object to this map function. And then we'll have this JSON array. So if we just take this JSON array and simply just return as a response. So see, we have this response. So let's just give this status 200. That will be our OK status. And we'll do a second thing, which will be the data. And the data is going to be that JSON array, which is this. And then we'll pass that response to this content service, which will load it on the page. So I think that should do everything I need to do here. So if I just go ahead and save this and just upload it. So clasp push. We should have all of that up and running. Let's go try to test this and see what happens. So if we go to this, we may need to do some setup here to get to our spreadsheet app, but it seems like we already have done spreadsheet apps before here in our do post. So we should already have the privileges for that. So I don't think we need anything else. We can just open our dev page without having to publish this because this is our do get. And nice. So it seems like that worked. That seems to be that data from that spreadsheet as a JSON array. So I got ID 1, first Monica, the last name, telephone this. So that's actually really nice. I'm curious what's going to happen if there is a space in the column name. So let's just change this to first name and see what happens when we do this. So I'm going to just go ahead and refresh this. So it seems to work just fine. Now I'm not going to do that in my data, even though it works. So I'll just do all lowercase column names because I prefer to work with nice data. And then if I just reload this, let me just close this. We basically got our nice JSON return. So this basically returns all the rows from, or it should return all the rows from that spreadsheet. So 98, well, starting from 0, that's 99. But the ID for the last one is 121. And apparently that should be John. So let's go check that out. So 121, John, we're good. So the array is returned. That's very nice. Now, whether I want this to return the whole data with one chunk or not, that's a different question. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at this. So what I want to do next, I want to do post with this same 4 columns. So ID, first, last, phone. So let's work on this do post. So one thing we need to do, we're trying to post data to our spreadsheet. So what should happen, somebody should be sending us JSON object with these values. Let me just change this to raw data so I can copy one of these. As an example. So we need do post function to accept something like this. But we're not going to be accepting IDs because we want our IDs to be auto-populated. We will be accepting first, last, phone. Now, when somebody does a post, we probably want to make sure that this column names are actually matching our column names and they're not sending us some weird stuff. So it doesn't say like phone 2. It should match our column name. So to do that, I'm not going to hard code the first, last, phone, all of that. What I'm going to do instead, I'm just going to go to my spreadsheet and get the actual column names. So that way I will know what the column names actually are. So let's just quickly go ahead and do that. Let's just grab this spreadsheet and move that right in here. And then we'll get our worksheet. Well, I guess I'm just going to copy this line out of here too, and the worksheet name is the same name we just had, so this customers. So far, so good. We'll just put it in there. Now in here, I would like to just get the headers. So that just means I need to get this. So let's just call it headers again. We're going to take that worksheet and I'm going to do get range. And in this, we're going to start from the first row, first column. The number of rows is going to be 1. And the number of columns is going to be however many columns we have in that worksheet. So we'll just do ws.get last column like this. And then we'll get values. Now this is going to return an array of arrays. So I just want to get the first row from it because we only have one row. So I'll just do 0 to get the first row. So at this point, this headers should be an array of headers. Now we should now be getting this contents of the body. So we have this that's being sent to us. And we basically have to make sure that JSON body that's being sent to us contains all of these headers. Now, one of the headers I don't want in here, though, is the ID. We'll just say the ID is always going to be the first column. So let's just take this and also remove the first column from that. So I'll just take headers and shift that first thing in there, which is going to be the first column. Let's just comment this. So now we're going to get the response. Then we're going to take that body, we're going to parse to a JSON object. So once we get this parsed to a JSON object, now we need to check if those things that are being passed are matching our own headers right here. So I'm going to take body JSON and get the keys out of it. So I can do that by doing object.keys. So this basically is going to give me an array of these headers. So now I need to make sure those keys match my headers. So I think the way I'm going to do that, I'm just going to sort both of these. After they're both sorted, then I will compare. I think that would be the easiest thing to do. So let's start by sorting both of these. So this is going to give me an array. So let's just save this. And let's just sort them. And it's going to sort by default way it's sorting. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to sort this one and I'm going to sort this one as well. Now, since sort affects the array, we should be able to just do this. And at this point, these headers would be sorted and these past headers would be sorted too. Now, the reason I'm sorting this is because if I have those two arrays and I need to compare them, right? So if this one is A, B, C, and this other headers, they may not pass them in the same order. It may be like B, C, A. They did pass all the headers, even though they're not in the same order. So that's why if I sort these and then compare, I'll know that they did pass all of the headers. So now that they are sorted, we need to make sure we compare if those are the same. So let's just create a separate function here. And this should be not a public function, so I'm going to do an underscore in the function name. So we'll accept two arrays. So what we'll do first, I'm just going to compare the length of both arrays. So just check if they have the same number of items. And if they don't, I know they're not equal at that point, so something is wrong. And again, in this case, I assume you have to pass every column. So we'll simply just say if array1 dot length is not equal to array2 dot length, and let's just do an if statement here. So in this case, we're going to return false. And we'll stop right there. So the second case is going to be, now let's go and loop through them and see if they match. So I'll just do a simple for loop here. And I'll say starts from 0, goes until the length of the first array. Let's not forget this part. And then we're going to do I++. So we'll do an if statement here. And again, we'll say if the array 1 in that index, the item in there, is equal to array 2 in that same index. Well, if it's not equal to. So if the item in this position is not equal to the item in the second loop in that position, then we know these are not equal. So we can just return false and stop the execution. And if we keep going and it doesn't stop in any of this, then I suppose then we can say it's true. So we'll just say return true. So now we should be able to use that in our other function. So once we do all of this, we'll just say if so we'll say if the headers are not equal to headers passed, well, this is actually equals to. Let's just do if they're not equal to headers passed. What we're going to do, we're going to basically return. Let's just start by, I guess, setting that message here on top. So I'm going to declare that variable JSON response. I'm going to copy that. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say if the headers don't match, I'm going to set that response to be equal to a JSON object. And we'll just do a message. And we'll say invalid arguments passed. So this will be the JSON response. Now, at some point, we need to actually do that response. So we'll just copy paste this. And we'll return that JSON response. It seems like I have to do this like return a lot around here. So maybe we should just put this in its own function. And I'll just paste this in here and we'll just do this JSON response as the argument to this, which will basically just do this content service thing. So we'll just return this. So that should allow us now to take this and instead of doing, for example, this, we should be able to just say return response. And I think I'm going to make that a private function. Let's do that. Okay, so in a similar fashion, I'm going to take this and scroll down and find that do post that I just did. And instead of doing all of that, I will do it directly in here. And we'll just return this. So we'll basically say if they don't match, this is the response, return this, and that should stop executing this function. Now, otherwise, we have to actually append those rows. So basically, we need to create an array of arrays of some sort. And the first thing in that array is going to be the ID, which we need to handle, I suppose, separately. But before we get to the ID, let's just get the rest of the stuff. So we're going to need the headers in the order that we need them. Now here, I took those headers and I sorted them. So before we sort them, maybe we should make a copy of them. And we'll take the headers and do slice, and that should make a copy of it. Okay, so this will be our headers copy in the original order. Let's just do that. And again, we don't need the ID of this, so we'll still just shift and drop the ID out of it. And what we'll do, we'll take that headers in the original order and map it to a new array over here. And for each header, so what we'll do, we'll basically take the body that was passed to us, the body JSON, and grab the age, the header, and it's going to start with the first one. And the first one is going to grab basically the right argument from that body JSON that was passed to us. And we should be able to just return this. So I don't need this brackets. Just like this should be fine. So again, this is going to return a new array. Okay, so that's going to be our array of data, which will be missing the first column, which is the ID. So now let's go figure out how we're going to get that ID. So what I'll do, I'll go to the spreadsheet, grab this IDs, and then figure out what's the highest number of those IDs and add 1 to it to figure out the next ID. So let's just grab the data from the first column. So we got the headers here. Then we slice them. We do all of that stuff. Let me get the IDs before I get the headers. Starting from the second row, we're going to go the first column. We're going to go until the last one. So we'll take the worksheet, get last row, and we'll only get the first column and get values to get it to an array. So this should be an array of IDs. That's an array of arrays. So let's just call it like that. So now we should find what's the maximum. Let's create a function for that. And we'll pass the array of array to this. And we need to return the highest number. Well, we'll start by setting our max ID to 0. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to loop through that array of arrays. And this is an array of arrays, so it's going to return a row. And in each row, I need to check if in that row, the first column, which is going to be the number, is greater than this max ID. So I'm going to say if that R0 is greater than our max ID, then we need to make our max ID equal to that R0. So that will be our new max. Otherwise, we'll keep the max ID the same. So once we go through that whole thing, we can just return the max ID, whatever that ends up being. So I think that should work. Now let's try to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to grab this function. Again, let's just make it private. Copy this, go back here. And right here, we should be able to just use that, passing this array of arrays. Not this one, but this one. And maybe we don't really have to get this on top here, because if we error out, there is no reason for us to read this data. So let's just move that reading data part here. So now we're going to pass that array of IDs after we read that from the spreadsheet. And that should give us what's the maximum. And based on that, we'll figure out what's the new ID. So we'll just say new ID number, maybe, should be equal to whatever this gives us plus 1. So at this point, I have this array of data, which is going to be the data that's being passed. I need to add this extra new ID number to the beginning of that. So I'm going to take that array of data, and to that, I'm going to unshift, which allows us to add to the beginning of that this new ID number. And then we should be able to write that array of data to our worksheet like this. So we might want to do some extra error handling here. But again, for the time being, I want to just save this and see what happens. Let's just push it. Go back and refresh this to see if we have any errors. So far, so good. Now the next part is going to be to try to post to this do post function and see if we're able to add a new line to this data. With doGet, I can go here and reload this dev link, but with doPost, I have to actually publish it. Now I need to refresh this to make sure I get all the new stuff, and I may have accidentally saved this. So let me just go back and push this one more time and then refresh this. That's more like it. This is our new stuff that we just did. Now let's just try to deploy this. So to this, now we need to post something. Now to be able to do that, again, we have to use some sort of front-end application. So now I could go and write this HTML file the same way I did before in the previous video, put it on GitHub and send it over, which might not be that bad actually to do. So I'm going to go to the JavaScript. And in this JavaScript, we were basically just posting something, I think, right here. See, the name is John. So I just have to make sure we post the right thing. So I'm just going to copy this, go back and just edit this thing, and scroll down to this and replace it with this new one. Now I'm just going to do first, last, and phone. So that will be our phone number, the first name, the last name of this person. And just for testing purposes, while we're doing this, let's put this in the wrong order, which should not matter the way we did this. So I'm just going to go ahead and commit those changes. So we should have this. Let's go ahead and open this in a browser. Hopefully that updates quickly. I know sometimes with GitHub, there could be some time between you update that and you get the results in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the console, have it open, and let's just click add row and see what happens. No error messages. Let's go check our spreadsheet. Hey, check it out. We got Jake, new person, 122 as an ID. Let me go back and rerun that again. And that should add another one, but it's a new ID. So all of that worked actually pretty nicely. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.